What is going on, everybody? Another slate of MLB DFS is on tap for today. We have 11 games on FanDuel for tonight for the main slate with lock set for 640. We are here to answer any questions you may have to get you set for tonight's slate and make those lineups look all pretty. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, and this is the FanDuel Fantasy Live Q&A, answering any questions you may have as we get set for MLB DFS for tonight for about the next 25 or so minutes. If you have questions, shoot those over to the FanDuel YouTube page in the comments section. We'll also answer some questions from Twitch and from Facebook. And again, we are doing this live every weekday, 4 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page or wherever you want to watch this thing. We're doing it every weekday right here at the same place. Also, a reminder, our podcast, The Solo Shot, goes up every weekday. It's recorded live on YouTube at 9 a.m., goes up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after that. We got that going on. The Daily ISO with Tom Vecchio, the NBA side, coming up again later this week. We've got a PGA podcast in there. A solo one this week because Brandon Gadula is on a well-deserved vacation, and also a NASCAR podcast this week. So we are locked and loaded. A lot of sports back. It's been a weird past couple of months, but, some normalcy from a sports perspective. Hopefully all of you are not on your normal schedules for other stuff, but hopefully staying safe and getting to watch some sports in your free time. Talking about tonight's slate, obviously the headliner for DFS is Walker Buehler. He is $10,500 on FanDuel. And normally, given the other options at pitcher, you would just lock in Walker Buehler and go from there. Because honestly, why would you not when the other options are Kyle Gibson, Jeff Samardzija, Homer Bailey? The problem is that Buehler is not fully stretched out. When they took a break for COVID-19, Buehler wasn't pitching, which makes sense. He's a super young arm, went through a lot of workload last year, was trying to keep himself fresh for when the season actually did start. 182 innings last year just in the regular season, and then some in the postseason as well, 12.2 in the postseason. Makes sense that he'd want to be fresh. But that means he's not fully ramped up yet. I'm expecting about 4 to 5 innings or so out of Walker Buehler for tonight, and that's not quite enough for me to get there in DFS. So love Buehler, the pitcher. Generally will be on board with him for DFS, but I think for today, not a place I necessarily want to go. The pitchers I discussed this morning in the solo shot, talked about Kyle Gibson as being a guy I expect to go pretty deep in the game, facing Arizona. On board with him, Homer Bailey. Not the most conventional name, I don't think, and I don't hope for DFS, but he's at home against the Cardinals. Not a bad matchup. Made some strides last year with increased four-seam fastball usage. Okay with him. Merrill Kelly wasn't my top 3, but he was a guy discussing things to watch. Has been better since he upped his cutter and his curveball usage last year. But the guy I mentioned first was actually Tyler Mahle. He's $7,200 facing the Cubs. Cubs lineup was not out last time I checked. It should be out because we are within 3 hours of their game, but it wasn't last time I checked. But regardless, I do think that Mahle is interesting because he was able to get some strikeouts last year, and strikeouts pretty hard to come by on tonight's slate. First question we have here is from Aaron. What do you think about pitching Gibson and doing a 3 Padres and 3 Rays stack? So Gibson, already mentioned, on board with him. He is $8,200. Decent numbers last year. He did get removed from the rotation at one point for Minnesota, but the peripherals were better than the results for Kyle Gibson. A Rays stack I am on board with. They're facing Kyle Wright, and Wright didn't do so hot. Last year, it was only 19 2/3 innings in the majors, but even in AAA, 24% strikeout rate, nothing to be too concerned about. So I think that the Rays are definitely an option. The Padres stack. Padres are facing Samardzija. The issue that I have there, Aaron, is that game is in San Francisco, which is generally a putrid park for offense, but it's especially putrid for tonight. The temperature there, as you can see here, is 60 degrees in San Francisco. That's one of only, I guess once you count the indoor games, it's one of only a couple games with the temperature below 80 degrees. So that's going to lower me quite a bit on bats in both sides. I am generally okay stacking against Samardzija. Would prefer doing so when they are on the road, so I'm not getting exposure to San Francisco. So the only part there I'm not on board with is the Padres side. Lane is asking McNeil, Rosario, Cespedes, and Alonso, a good stack for the Mets. I don't think the Mets lineup is out yet. At least last time I checked, it wasn't. So it's not out yet. I am on board with McNeil despite facing a lefty. Rosario Cespedes, okay with them. Alonso, yeah, I think that definitely works, Lane. The one guy I would throw out there, or two guys, I guess, who were not discussed are someone we talked about yesterday, J.D. Davis. He is a lefty banger. He has a lot of power. Probably going to bat at a decently high leverage spot in the order. The concern with Davis is he could leave for a pinch, or I guess for a defensive replacement if they get ahead later in the game. So it's definitely a concern, but I still like the power there. And Michael Conforto's numbers against lefties actually a little bit better than you might expect. Last year, just a 90 WRC plus, but that's not necessarily the number we want to focus on here. Instead, the batted ball numbers, a 33% hard hit rate, 35% fly ball rate. Neither of those numbers are elite, but when you put them in a good matchup, which is what Conforto has tonight, I think he has enough juice to get it done. So in addition to the guys that you mentioned, I think that Conforto and Davis are two others I'd consider within that Nets lineup. Alvin is asking, I have a question about process. I welcome and encourage all questions about process, so I like this already. When looking for pitch to target, do you focus on WOBA allowed or batted ball stats, assuming that they don't have both results? Okay, so Alvin's asking, do we focus on results or peripherals effectively? I'm assuming this is based on platoon splits. And let's use Walker Buehler as an example here. We're not going to stack against Walker Buehler, but I want to use an example because it mostly boils down to sample size, Alvin. When we're talking about WOBA, it takes a lot more time for WOBA to stabilize. Last year, in a full season, Walker Buehler faced 382 left-handed batters, 355 right-handed batters. His weighted on base average allowed is not going to stabilize over that small of a sample. But the batted ball data that you referenced is more likely to stabilize in that sample because it just stabilizes more quickly. You can search for stabilization rates over on fangraphs.com. They have a full artograph on it. It shows which stats stabilize most quickly. And batted ball numbers are going to stabilize more quickly than something like WOBA, batting average allowed, stuff like that. So for me, I'm going to focus more on these batted ball numbers. I think actually more important than that is the strikeout numbers. Strikeout rates can stabilize, and I think it's like 60 plate appearances. That's a really small number. So when I'm looking at a pitcher's splits in a small sample, whether it be we're talking, versus lefty versus righty, talking about what they've done in just a small sample in general, I'm going to look at strikeout rate first. If it is a sample of recent games, I'm going to look at their swinging strike rate because that stabilizes even more quickly than a strikeout rate does. Just go to game logs and then plate discipline on Fangraphs to see the swinging strike rate. And I'm going to look at that to see what they're doing in the sample and see if there's someone I can trust. So really good question there, Alvin. I appreciate you asking that. Mateo is asking, I am having a hard time. Which stacks do you like? Cubs, Brewers, Angels, or some other team? Okay, I don't like the Cubs. Sorry, I like the pitcher facing the Cubs, Tyler Mahle. I think that you could like the Cubs are the Cubs. The Cubs are a good offense, but they will strike out a bit. 23% strikeout rate against righties. So probably not going to the Cubs stack personally. I do like the Brewers a lot. They're facing Derek Holland. Holland lost his spot in the rotation with the Giants last year, and actions speak pretty loudly when it comes to teams. And if a team like the Giants can afford to take Holland out of the rotation, that says we probably want to stack against him. Did get some strikeouts, but a lot of walks, a lot of hard contact allowed. So definitely on board with the Brewers there. Angels are facing Justice Sheffield. Sheffield's looked apparently pretty good in the exhibition games. I don't think he'll go super long tonight, but I think that we probably have better stacks. If we're talking about just straight up stacks that I like, the Brewers are up there. The Mets are definitely up there as well. Those would probably be the primary teams that I would turn to from a stacking perspective. I mentioned before that I am okay with the Rays and stacking them. And I think those are the primary ones for today. So looking mostly at the Mets, at the Brewers, at the Rays. I also think that the Reds are in play against Alec Mills. Those are the main ones I'm focusing on for tonight. Brian McGlade. Hello, Brian. How are you doing? How do you feel about the Royals now that the Tigers are starting Rony Garcia? I'm on board with it. I'm annoyed with their lineup because they have a lot of bad hitters. I don't know how the best way to phrase that. They got a lot of bad hitters in this lineup. Once you get basically past Salvador Perez, it's not great here within this Royals lineup, but I think individually there are enough good hitters on this Royals team where maybe you do like a 3-player stack or a 4-player stack and hope that those 4 players do enough. I do value full lineup strength when trying to decide which teams that I want to stack. Because if the guys at the bottom part of the order aren't doing anything, then you're not going to get more volume for the guys at the top end. So it is a concern for me. But I think Jorge Soler, obviously an awesome option. Hunter Dozier, not an option because I think he has COVID. Whit Merrifield will work. Some stolen bases there. Alberto Mondesi, obviously lots of upside. So Ryan O'Hearn, like the results really bad last year, but he did hit the ball pretty hard. So I think the Royals are in play. It's also a really good park for hitting for tonight. Actually, Brian may have helped build this page. I'm not sure. But looking at that one, 85-degree temperature, winds blowing out at 13 miles per hour. So I'm on board with the Royals for sure. Thank you, Snacks, for dropping in. Yevgeny is asking thoughts on Sandoval against Seattle. I like the talent of Patrick Sandoval. My concern is with the length because in his final tune-up before the regular season, 55 pitches for Patrick Sandoval. If I'm projecting a pitch count for Sandoval, I'm probably going about 70 or so pitches, and that's not really enough. The match with the Mariners is really good. I love the fact that they will strike out. It's a good park for pitching for tonight. I'm just concerned about the length. So I like Sandoval as a pitcher, Yevgeny. I think in this specific spot, I might not wind up going there just because I'm not sure how long Sandoval is going to go into the game. Taking a look at some questions here from Facebook. Austin Brown says, that data is amazing. How can I get access to something like this? So, Austin, any data that I have referenced here on the podcast is all via FanGraphs. Outside of Park Factors, I pull those from RotoGrinders. If you search for RotoGrinders Park Factors, that will come up there. But pretty much everything that I use from a data perspective is over on FanGraphs. I'd recommend checking out a membership at FanGraphs. It's definitely a worthwhile thing because it increases the load times, makes things super fast, and it's a page or a site that I use for literally every single part of my research. Like if I want to go and see what Homer Bailey did last year when he started to throw more four-seam fastballs, I just have this link in here. I can copy it into the bar, and we'll go here and look at Homer Bailey's numbers. And bam, automatically I can see, okay, in this 15-start sample, Homer Bailey had a 10.7% swinging strike rate, and it was above 11% in his final 5 starts of the year. So I definitely would recommend checking out all that data. If you're talking about where I get the data in my sheet, this is all just self-assembled. It's just the stuff I pull from FanGraphs based on the most relevant samples. And then these are each team's current active roster against that pitcher's handedness last year. Once again, in case you've missed the first couple of days, you go to FanGraphs, click on the team numbers, and click active roster right there. A really huge resource early in the season so you can know what teams are like with the current players on their roster. Alvin is asking, any change to your stacks or pitching rankings? Snacks had mentioned, or Brian, I guess, had mentioned the Royals. I've upped the Royals with Rody Garcia pitching for tonight. I think the weather there combined with that is good. I like the matchup for the Tigers against Kyle Zimmer, but they're really, 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 really bad against righties. I'm okay with stacking the Tigers against lefties. Very much less okay against righties. So probably not going to go there despite the matchups. I think the big change for me would be upping the Royals. I mean, I'm a huge Alberto Mondesi guy. Mondesi batting in the middle of that order. I think he's $2,800. We're always, I guess not as much now as in the past, but we're always looking for shortstops. Mondesi, 2 paths to upside with his batted ball numbers and with the stolen bases. So definitely worth checking out there for sure. Jason Schendel is asking, do you like the Twins today? I'm from Minnesota, so I like the Twins every day. They got my boy Byron Buxton finally in the lineup for the first time this year. So that's the fan Jim talking. I always like the Twins. DFS player Jim, they're facing Carlos Martinez, and Martinez, back when he was a starter, was pretty good at limiting hard contact, keeping the ball on the ground. He could get some strikeouts back then. So I'm not really interested in the Twins from a DFS perspective. Now, the angle you could take in your mind is that the Twins are a really good lineup, and they're a really good offense. If we look at them here, their active roster numbers against righties, 119 WRC plus, a 42% hard hit rate, one of the higher fly ball rates on the slate. They don't strike out that much, so if you put them up against a middling pitcher, they can do a lot of damage. If you view Carlos Martinez as being a middling pitcher, then I think that a twin stack is in play. I'm just a bit more skeptical because of the ground ball numbers for Carlos Martinez, and that's why I'm not as high on the Twins, even though, again, I am generally drawn towards them. Aaron is asking, will you put out picks on YouTube like you did yesterday? Oh, so Aaron, I think you're referring to the FanDuel Hurry Up. That is a daily show that we do. I will be doing that for MLB DFS every Monday and Friday. Those are only Monday and Friday. We have PGA DFS with Davis Maddock, goes up on Tuesday. I think that full show should be up at some point today. And then Tom Becky is going to be doing NBA on Wednesday and Thursday. So the MLB version of that is only on Monday and Friday. It's a really quick, 15-minute show that I do with Greg Sussman. So you can check those out then, but that's not an everyday thing. This is a Monday, Friday thing when it comes to MLB DFS. So hopefully that answers your question there. Tim Stone is asking, starting Pablo Sandoval to get bats in like Trout, Muncy, Bellinger, JD Martinez, solid idea. So with Pablo Sandoval, the concern that I have is upside because that game is in San Francisco. And again, I hate San Francisco. So I think what I would try to do, Tim, instead is look for players you like with really cheap salaries on teams that you would consider stacking. So if we ever maybe get the Mets lineup, I don't know if we ever will. Maybe that's asking a whole lot out of the Mets to eventually release a lineup. They may have already. I just can't see it quite yet. But if you can find a super cheap hitter on the Brewers, if you like them, I think, again, you could go towards the Royals. Like Ryan O'Hearn is probably someone I prefer to go with if you're trying to really find a salary saver at some point. I think he's $2,100. Maikel Franco, more so a lefty banger than a righty banger, so probably not going there. But I think O'Hearn could work in that situation if you're trying to find someone super cheap. So I think, Tim, what I try to do is find a player on a team you are willing to stack. It doesn't necessarily have to be the specific team you are stacking, but find a player on a team you are willing to stack and use them as your value play rather than going with someone like Pablo Sandoval, because we need offensive upside. We need a lot of offensive volume if we're going to get that player to have like a difference-making, like a slate-busting day. And I don't think I'm going to get that out of Pablo Sandoval or honestly any Giants for today. Tyler Barb is asking, Daniel Mengden against Colorado? Not really into it. I think it's a great park for pitching for tonight because the temperature there, 59 degrees, the coldest in the slate. We love cold temperatures for DFS. The problem is that Mengden is not a big strikeout guy. 17% strikeout rate. Last year, that was last year as a starter, just a 17% strikeout rate. Allows a lot of hard contact. That may not matter as much because the Rockies' offense is #bad outside of Colorado. But I do think that it's just not quite enough for me to up Mengden in my mind. I need strikeouts. I don't expect Mengden to get them, so I don't think I will be going there for me personally. Danny Chappell is asking, sorry if I said your last name wrong. Danny, St. Louis stack. They're facing Homer Bailey. I actually kind of like Homer Bailey as a pitcher. Again, going back to last year when he started to throw his four-seam fastball a bit more, he still had a lot of hard contact. And the Cardinals as a team provide a lot of hard contact. Maybe that's enough for you to justify going with St. Louis. The flip side of that, though, is that Homer Bailey last year, 22% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate, good plate discipline numbers, and this Cardinals team, the active roster against righties, is just a 94 WRC plus with a 24% strikeout rate. So if I'm choosing between using Homer Bailey as my pitcher or going with a St. Louis stack, I prefer to go Homer Bailey. I know that's wild to say because Bailey has been a guy we stacked against a lot over the last couple of years. But I think for tonight, he's actually in play as a pitcher. So that's where I wind up going a little bit personally for this one. Robert is asking, best two pitchers you would start tonight. I mentioned Tyler Mahle before. Think I'm still going there. He's $7,200 facing the Cubs. The big reason is that 25% strikeout rate. Got hurt last year, and that did cut his season short. But bleeding into that injury, I think it was his 15 starts before the injury or 14 starts with more curveballs before he got hurt. A 4.00 skill interactive ERA, 25% strikeout rate, not a lot of hard contact. I actually like Mahle a decent amount. I know that could go very poorly. So maybe this is a night where you shy away a bit from cash games, but I do think that he works for tournaments. And then Kyle Gibson is my number 2 pitcher for tonight. Facing the Diamondbacks, basically a league average offense essentially across the board. And Gibson is, he stretched out. He threw 84 pitches in his most recent exhibition start. And there aren't a lot of guys who are stretched out right now. So we can find one like Gibson who is competent. I'll take it. If you want my top two, I would go with Molly and Gibson. Hopefully we have better choices. We do have better choices tomorrow. I've looked ahead. There are a lot better choices tomorrow. So look at that. Like Jacob deGrom. Awesome. We can totally get with that. Brandon Woodruff, Joe Musgrove. Let's go. Today, not quite as beautiful from a pitching perspective. Best two pitchers for the value. Okay, so Robert, changing the question there. The best two pitchers just for value. I think that with Molly and Gibson being pretty cheap, I think that they would fit that as well. Rob is asking, started working on lineups, going with a KC Boston stack. Wish me luck. Good luck. I think those are both in play. David Peterson is making his debut for the Mets. Not bad numbers in Double-A, but again, that was in Double-A, and that's a different level of competition. Not a huge strikeout rate. The one thing I would note there, Rob, with the Red Sox is that the ground ball rate for Peterson, I think, was pretty good when he was down in the minors, and that does matter quite a bit. If we're looking at this strictly from an upside perspective, we want fly balls, we want hard hit balls, and Peterson in Double-A last year did a pretty good job of keeping the ball on the ground, 53% ground ball rate, even higher before that. So I'm not super into Boston personally, but you could do worse for sure. Question from Gage was asking about the favorite pitcher. Just went through those with Tyler Molly and Kyle Gibson. Alvin is asking, I know you upped the Royals. Did you move them ahead of the Brewers or the Mets? No. Good question. I still have the Brewers and the Mets as my top two stacks tonight, despite the fact they have not released their lineups yet, even though they probably should have by now. Whatever. Still would put them ahead. I think that it's pretty easily for me, the Mets being number one, the Brewers being number two, potentially flip-flopped, and then to me it's everybody else kind of after that. What do you think about the Mets stack for tonight? That's from Aaron. I like it. As mentioned before, I think that the Mets are facing Matt Hall, and Hall, older pitcher, making his first career major league start. A lot of walks last year in a small sample. Wasn't super overpowering in the minors. 8.9% swinging strike rate in the majors last year. 5.30 ERA in AAA. So I think the Mets are, if they're not the number one stack tonight, they're probably number two alongside the Pirates. What do you think about Zach Davies? This is from Matt. Okay, so Zach Davies is in a good pitching environment because he is on the road in San Francisco, which is a very cold place tonight, 60-degree first pitch temperature, and the Giants are a bad offense. That's good. Davies doesn't get strikeouts, though. 15% strikeout rates over his final 14 starts last year. That's even though he was throwing a sinker less. And generally when you see decreased sinker usage, it's an attempt to up the strikeout rate. It didn't matter for Davies. Those still did not get there. So I want more strikeouts. Davies probably isn't going to get me those, so not someone on my list for tonight. What about the Red Sox stack? Talked about that a little bit earlier. You probably asked that as I was answering it, so apologies on being late on this one. But again, with Peterson's ground ball rate being so as high as it was in the minors, I'm not super into it. But if you want to justify it, the Red Sox they're a very good offense. That definitely does help. Not a huge strikeout guy. That helps him as well. Personally, I probably won't get to the Red Sox just because the ground ball rate is as high as it was for Peterson last year. But the low strikeout rate does help your cause for sure. That's going to be all the time that we have for today. But once again, we are here every weekday, 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page. So make sure you are subscribed, whether it be here. You can watch us on Twitch. You can watch us on the FanDuel Facebook page. No matter what, you can find us. Ask us some questions. Jason asked about the Reds. I do like the Reds. So I do like them. Aaron asked about the Alec Mills. Not going there. Not going to Josh Lindblom either. So we'll answer a couple of questions here late before we get off. But once again, back again tomorrow with the solo shot at 9 a.m. Eastern on YouTube. And then here with this show, 4 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you want to watch this stream. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, front of the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, once again, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in and for your very good and intelligent questions. As always, I appreciate it. Good luck tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow on the FanDuel Fantasy Live Q&A.